Hey, what's going on, Hope City parents? We're just through the month of May. We're trying to figure out ways that we can partner with you, that I can give you some information that you can either take with you and learn, or ways that you can partner with me and what we're doing here, and I can partner with you as a parent in helping your students grow spiritually. And so we're just going to try something different. We're going to put out a few videos here over the month of May, and today we've got a special guest, but I'll get to that in a second. But we're just going to be putting out some videos. Hopefully these are things that you can either implement with your kids, things to think about with your kids. Maybe these are things that you've never thought about, or things that you have thought about and just need to be reminded of. But just want to figure out ways that I can encourage you, that I can help you as like we try to do this together and help our students grow spiritually. And so today, and for the next video, you're gonna have me and my mom. So this is me and my mom. My mom's name is Sylvia, but I know her as Mom. And so today we're just gonna kind of talk about what she did as a parent for me growing up, some of the things that I have learned about over the last week or so, and some of the things that I didn't know about. But she's got some things to share with us. But go ahead and give yourself an introduction.
Give myself an
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I'm Mom, and hindsight is 2020. So I guess I would tell you that the things that I say now, I feel like I wanted to be very intentional in raising Thomas and his brother, and some things I did well, and some things I didn't. But I am willing to tell you what I did do, and then you can make your own decisions whether you think it's good or bad.
Yeah, so if you like me as a person, try it out, and if you don't like me as a person, don't do it at all. No, but for real, I just thought it'd be cool to get my mom's perspective for me, because when I was growing up in student ministry, you know, your parents are always doing things and you don't really know what they're doing, or you do know what they're doing and you don't like it. Or you just have zero clue what's happening and you're just along for the ride. But let's go ahead and just jump in. I know you've got a few things to share, but what are some things that you did, some things that you thought about when I was growing up, some things that, or decisions that maybe you made to help in spiritual growth of me and Daniel?
Okay. So I don't know if it's, maybe I should at least let you know that, so Thomas is actually my third child. I had twins prior to Thomas being born that were born prematurely, and neither one of them survived. So his brother Sam lived 11 months and his sister Sarah lived 8 months, and they never came home from the hospital. So that, I had always thought that what you did was you got married, got a house, had children, and lived life ever after, and that changed my perspective. So in some ways he benefited from that, because I suddenly started trying to wrestle with the idea of what really happened here. Why would you have children and they be taken away? Where was God? Who was God? And so that changed my faith journey in a lot of ways. And what I realized is that essentially children are a gift from God. And so that changed the way I parented him, because it went from just being my job to kind of care for him and being responsible, but to being recognizing that he was a gift. And so I don't know if he felt like a gift, but it was more of a question then of not what I thought his life should look like, but what does God think his life should look like. And that's a different perspective, because I thought that he would grow up and he would either go to medical school or go to law school or something like that. And he told me he was going into ministry, and my first thought was, I think he's going to be poor. And then my second thought was, no, you've always known he was a gift from God, and so that's what you need to accept. And so that was kind of the first thing.
Yeah, so how did that affect some of the way that you parented, some of the decisions that you made, like knowing that fact, like looking, you said it gave you a different perspective, but like, so what were some of the things that changed? Like what
I think recognizing that helped me understand. So, you know, in Psalms it talks about you were knit together in my womb. and that he knew all about you and knew everything about you. But then it also goes on to say that every one of your days is numbered and is planned out for you. So instead of me thinking, I'm in control, I have to come up with a plan for this child, I really needed to think about, how do I help him understand God's plan for his life? And so for you, I really made a decision fairly early on that there were two things that I could do to help you long haul. One of them was to help you grow your faith, and the other one was to provide you an education that would also support that in what other way. So, I think God designed families to make disciples, and so if that's the case, then we really need to be very intentional about your faith journey. And so when we were making decisions about setting priorities in the family, we had to make decisions about what that means. So when you were coming home saying, I want to play basketball and I want to play soccer, and my friends are joining this club team and my friends are joining that club team, I had to make the decision that what is going to make it best for you to be able to continue to participate in youth group and church and to spend time learning more about God, and how is that going to fit in time-wise, because there's a limited amount of time in any given day. So it wasn't an easy decision because you were not happy about that. You were convinced that you were going to be like an all-star NBA player or a...
Still hope.
Yeah, you still...
Yeah, there's still hope for that.
Or whatever it might be, but we know that less than 1% of kids go on to that, but 100% of kids are going to die. And so my goal was that, and I had the experience of children dying, that if you did die, that your faith was solid and I knew where you were going to be. And so that was the first decision, and then education supported that. So we made the decision fairly early on that you were going to go to a Christian school where you could talk to Jesus, talk to people about Jesus, sing songs about Jesus, make God the prize versus whatever else the world prioritizes.
Yeah, and it's interesting because when we were talking about this before, like recording the video stuff, I always thought that the reason why I couldn't play basketball and soccer at the same time was not because I wasn't gifted enough, but I thought it was because we didn't have enough money to make it happen. So to hear it be, it was a decision that you made when I was in 4th grade, because that was about the time when I first played basketball.
4th, 5th, 6th,
right,
7th,
but through
8th.
that, so through
every year you kept coming back, like, is this the year I get to be on the club team?
Right, but in my mind, I can remember making the decision between the AYSO soccer and Bruins basketball. That's where my love for Duke came, because of the blue and the Bruins. I don't know, go Duke. We lost half of our watchers now, but I think, like, in my mind, like, all I saw it was, like, at least now looking back, because obviously in the time I probably did react differently, but like thinking back now, like, all I remember was that was what I thought. But it obviously played an impact in my walk, because now look, because of that decision that you made, whether I understood what was happening or whether I liked it, like, it played a role in who I became and who Daniel became based on some of those decisions too. So
yeah, I think that it was at some point one of the youth pastors had a family gathering that we would go to once a year or twice a year, and I remember him standing up there and saying, your children are not going to be pro athletes, and it isn't necessarily the best decision that you think that maybe they would get scholarship funding, although that would be nice. But if the world is going to continue to cut away at time where kids should be in church, and Wednesday nights are gone and Sunday nights are gone, and so we just made a decision that we have to preserve those times where you can interact with the people that can help your spiritual growth. Not that we were saying that we didn't have the biggest part in that. You can't outsource spiritual growth. I think that as a parent you have to be part of that, but certainly when kids are younger, they like to listen to people that are not their parents. And so having a cool youth pastor that says you should make church a priority is just reinforces that.
Yeah, I like that. You can't outsource spiritual growth.
Yeah, you
I
can't.
think, what?
You can't.
Yeah, I think that's really important to hear because, like, from a youth pastor's perspective, right? Obviously, like, I didn't know until now. Like, but like from a youth pastor's perspective, I look at the time that I get to spend with students, and if I'm lucky, I get 52 hours a year. As opposed, like that's if they come every week, every Wednesday, and that's if I can engage with them for the entire hour. There's times we're playing games, or there's times when we're doing other things in small groups, and so I don't necessarily even get to interact with every kid for an hour every week. And so I'm like, as a youth pastor, like my time with the student is very limited, and so I want to use that as best as I can.
Yep.
But imagine the amount of hours that they're spending with their parents or with their grandparents or whoever is watching them, to be able to add to that. Because the time that you spent with me was much more than the time I spent with any youth pastor I ever had.
Right. But there is a point in time when they're little, when you're little, anything I say goes. Like when you get into middle school, then you start questioning. So to have somebody who they can go to who can reinforce that is very helpful, because you don't think that, when you were in 6th, 7th, 8th grade,
you got
did
really
not
uncool.
think that I was cool.
Yeah,
right.
You got really uncool real quick.
Like, I actually just got cool yesterday for this video.
Yeah. But I think that's important to hear, because, there is a role for both of us as the parent and as the pastor, right? There's a role to play, and if we're each doing our part and doing it together, imagine the impact that can be had between that, both of us pouring in as a parent and as a youth pastor, or as a pastor pouring into a student. It's coming from everywhere then,
And we saw that with you. I know specific people that poured into you, that you would come home and you would talk about what they were saying, and then I could reinforce, yeah, that's right, that's true, and this is how it plays out in life. And I think that kids are gonna find, or kids, adults, everybody looks for fulfillment. We think a lot about introducing their bodies to food, and we think a lot about introducing your bodies to exercise, and we think about all of that. And so over a lifetime, we're introducing you to a lot of things, but we're not as intentional about thinking about your soul. And your soul is what is gonna drive every effort you have to fulfill yourself. And if you don't find it in God, you will look for it in other places that are going to be far less productive. And our pastor recently was talking about, you've got to get your buttons straight. If you miss the first button, then when you get at the bottom, it'll be a problem. And I'm stealing that because I think that that's super important. Our time as parents is really just that first few buttons. But if you don't get those first few buttons straight, when they get to the bottom, when they're dealing with marriage, when they're dealing with their own children, when they're dealing with struggles with work or whatever it may be, where are they going to go to be fulfilled or to fix that problem if those buttons aren't straight? But if you keep the buttons straight, then there's a better chance that it'll line up later on in their life.
Yeah, that's good. All right, so I feel like that is a lot to chew on for this first part, because we have a couple more things that you're going to share for the next part of this video. So just a couple questions as we wrap up part 1. What does it look like for you as a parent or a grandparent or a guardian, whatever your situation is? What does it look like for you to look at your student as a gift from God, as opposed to just a student, or just your child, or just your grandchild, or whatever? What does it look like if in your life, the way that you talk, the way that you act, the way that you interact, if you look at your student in that light? And then the other thing would just be, what does it look like to make decisions to disciple your children? What kind of decisions can you make? And they may be small. They may be small decisions, or they may be big ones, hey, you only play one sport, so you can go to church. I don't know what your household looks like or your family situation looks like, but what would it look like to start making some of those decisions intentionally to disciple your children that they may not even know about until later in life? So just a couple thoughts. Hopefully you'll come and watch part 2 of the video when it comes out. But that's it for now. Cool?
Cool.
Dope.